In the 20 years since Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans public schools have seen significant changes.
After the storm, the state took control of over 100 schools, resulting in widespread teacher layoffs and a shift to charters.
As we continue to explore that recovery to restructure, Leah McNeil walks us through this controversial system.
Wind's blowing here.
Katrina! It's been 5 years.
10 years.
13 years.
As the years passed, for some, the chaos and closures after Katrina felt distant as the new school system took shape.
I believe the reforms from an academic standpoint were an enormous success, and the proof is in the pudding.
Paul Vallis started as superintendent of the state-run Recovery School District in 2007. When he left in 2011, more than half of the 89 schools in the district were charter, up from 5 before the storm. Vallis says numbers don't lie.
Well, hands down, the academic improvement was dramatic, and it moved from the second worst school district in this entire state to middle of the pack.
In the first 10 years of the reforms, there was a huge increase in student test scores, graduation rates.
Jamie Carroll with Tulane University's Education Research Alliance says through State Board of Education and individual school data, numbers show school success after Katrina.
All student groups improved greatly on those different measures and through about 2015.
Since then, even with the state changing expectations for student evaluations and LEAP scores to adopting Common Core standards,
New Orleans outcomes have sustained at the same level in comparison to the rest of the districts in Louisiana, but at the same time, Louisiana has been increasing their standards and they have been increasing where they're ranked. So the sustainment is something that I think is a positive. Of course, we have more room to grow.
ERA data says there is room when it comes to student experience in the classroom 20 years after the storm.
Of course, the draw to certain schools, I think that still exists today.
Yes.
What do you mean by there is greater equity, but there's still kind of a gap that needs to be filled when it comes to that?
Yes, for sure. So I think after Hurricane Katrina, the students' test scores went up for all groups. Which is great, but that doesn't mean that all students are experiencing the same type of classroom or the same type of school.
I just want to see a school district that works for the large majority of the children that it is supposed to service.
Dr. Ashanta Wyatt is an educator and works as a consultant for some local charter schools. Dr. Wyatt, an Edna Carr grad, says while achievement is worth celebrating, it's also important to consider what numbers aren't being reported.
We talk a lot about growth in the new way we do school. When we ask about proficiency, we don't get any real answers because growth and proficiency are not synonymous. Yes, you can grow, but are you proficient?
The state says it is, citing a rise in K through third grade reading proficiency from 44.6% in 2023 to 46.9% in November of 2024. But Dr. Wyatt sees more than half of the students that are still behind.
So my issue is not that it's all charter. My issue is that you sold this all charter network to us on the basis of choice. And any one thing, it's not real choice for every family because not all children are flourishing in an all charter district. Just like, as they put it, not all children were flourishing in an all public school district.
There's also a big gap in the economic disadvantage status of students and which ones have access to the top rated schools versus which ones do not. If a student from an economically disadvantaged background gets into one of the top rated schools, they're likely to be extremely successful, but that is not as possible because some of these schools have admissions tests that are challenging to pass, as well as certain types of preferences for different types of students.
Multiple parents are expressing frustration after learning their child didn't get into a school of choice through the OneApp school application system.
It was just heartbreaking for it to come back and say that none of the 8 schools were able to accept your child.
Out of schools that I picked in my area, you chose a school that is not in my area and doesn't have bus transportation.
After Katrina, the shift to charter schools removed neighborhood-based school assignments. The RSD launched OneApp in 2012 to streamline the enrollment process across Orleans Parish.
It feels very segregated. It feels very cherry-picked to me.
It's now called NCAP, but Dr. Wyatt says it's always been problematic.
When you find that a large majority of Caucasian children are finding their way in the better schools, and a large majority of Black children are finding their way in the lower performing schools, it will feel segregated to you as well.
So I think that's a compounded question to answer.
NOLA Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Fatima Fulmore says unlike previous years, the system today includes all schools on NCAP.
Having schools with selection criteria or admission criteria is not a new thing in terms of being part of an education system. My hope is that every school that a family chooses is the best choice for each family.
In 2018, the RSD returned control back to the district. Fast forward to 2025, as Dr. Fulmore begins her first full year as NOLA Public School Superintendent, she points to measurable gains.
As of our school performance data last year, we didn't have any failing schools. You think about how we've had consecutive years of being a top improving school system for mastery plus growth. I think those are pretty notable and remarkable achievements.
When you look at the other side of that, the state data shows that Orleans Parish schools, they are improving, but I mean, that's still a C.
Right.
So how do you celebrate that progress while also still being realistic about the work that is still left to do? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a C and 1 point away from a B. But I think our educators, and even as a superintendent, we're very realistic and tapped into our opportunities for improvement. Literacy, I always say, is the great equalizer.
Dr. Fulmore plans on prioritizing partnerships and replicating success seen at high-performing schools.
And I have to be integral in those spaces and making sure that we're lifting up where great things are happening and what we see working and best practices.
She also plans to recognize outside forces affecting inside the classroom.
We have a lot of trauma in our system, so we don't have the luxury just to focus on test scores.
3 teens were killed in the span of a few hours.
Students were asked to raise their hands if they knew a victim of gun violence. Almost every hand was raised.
Ensuring that students feel whole continues to be the focus for charter school CEOs Jamar McNeely and Tara Johnson.
When I'm living in a city where 52% of students of color are living in poverty, and I understand that my population in my schools is roughly around 99 to 100% of students in color, I have work to do.
It's become an everyday task to make sure that we help them and assist them in any way possible, and especially with all of the things that we know that are going on.
The number of homeless families in New Orleans is on the rise.
School is out for the summer, and that means some families are struggling to put meals on the table.
20 years after Katrina, New Orleans remains a national model for school reform. By the 2024-2025 school year, NOLA Public Schools shrank to 67 schools. All but 2 were charter.
I'm not going to get caught up into charters. I'm not going to get caught up into public. I'm going to get caught up into the fight of what we have to do for our youth to sustain.
Two decades later, New Orleans schools are still evolving after a storm that reshaped our city, reshaped our souls, and the system that continues to mold the minds of New Orleanians to come. Leah McNeil, WWL, Louisiana.
Well, this fall, the state will roll out Grow, Thrive, Achieve. That is changing again how it measures student performance. You can watch Recovery to Restructure on WWL+, and we'll have much more special coverage on the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina in the coming weeks.